Most financial advice has the same problem. It tells you what you should do, spend less, save more, invest consistently, and then leaves you to figure out how to actually do it when real life gets in the way. And real life always gets in the way. The gap between knowing what to do and actually doing it consistently over years and decades is where most financial progress dies. Not because people don't understand the advice, but because the advice relies on something that runs out: willpower. And here's the thing about willpower: it's a finite resource. You have a certain amount of it each day, and it gets depleted by decisions, by stress, by fatigue, by the 100 small demands that life makes on you before you even get to the financial ones. By the time you're standing in a store or scrolling through a website at the end of a long week, willpower is often the last thing you have available. So what actually works isn't better advice. It's a better system, something structural, something that changes how decisions get made before the emotional state of the moment can override the rational one. Today, I want to give you 3 rules from minimalism that function exactly that way. Not as advice you have to remember and apply manually every time. As a system that runs in the background, making better financial decisions automatic without requiring you to fight yourself every step of the way. 3 rules, 3 different levels of your financial life. And together, they cover more ground than most budgeting systems ever could. Why rules? Beat willpower. Before we get into the rules themselves, I want to spend a moment on why this framing matters, because I think it's the thing most people miss when they try to improve their financial behavior and fail. When you rely on willpower to make good financial decisions, you're essentially betting that in the specific moment when a spending decision presents itself, you'll have enough mental and emotional resources to override the impulse. Sometimes you will. Often you won't, and the times you won't tend to cluster around exactly the moments when spending is most tempting, when you're tired, stressed, celebrating, or just worn down by a week that didn't go the way you wanted. Rules work differently. A rule doesn't ask you to resist anything in the moment. It asks you to make one decision, once in advance when you're thinking clearly, and then follow a process rather than exercise judgment every time. The decision has already been made. All you're doing is executing it. This is why wealthy people automate their investments rather than deciding each month whether to transfer money. It's why the most effective diets are the ones built around habits rather than daily choices. And it's why these 3 minimalism rules, applied consistently, will do more for your financial situation than any amount of motivation or good intentions. Structural beats. Motivational. Every single time. Rule 1. Lifestyle stays flat when income rises. This is the most important financial rule most people never follow. And the reason they don't follow it isn't that they don't know it. Most people would nod along if you described it to them. The reason they don't follow it is that it runs directly against the way we're wired to think about earning more money. When your income goes up, the natural, human, completely understandable response is to let your lifestyle reflect that. You worked hard for the raise. You deserve something better. The nicer apartment is only a few $100s more. The newer car is manageable with the higher salary. These individual decisions all feel reasonable. And in isolation, each one is. But here's what they add up to. Let's say your income grows from $60,000 to $80,000 over the course of a few years. A $20,000 annual increase, which works out to about $1,400 a month after tax. That's real money. And if you let your lifestyle absorb it, a better apartment here, a car upgrade there, a generally higher standard of living across the board, it disappears. Not dramatically, gradually, until the new income level feels exactly as tight as the old one did, because your expenses have quietly risen to meet it. Now run the other scenario. Same income trajectory, but every time income goes up, lifestyle stays exactly where it is. That $1,400 a month goes straight into investments instead of into a higher monthly cost baseline. $1,400 a month invested at 8% annual returns over 20 years is approximately $1,040,000. That's the cost of lifestyle inflation, not the cost of one decision, the cost of the pattern repeated every time income rises across a career. And here's what I want you to notice about this rule. It doesn't require sacrifice, it doesn't require living in discomfort or denying yourself things you genuinely need. It only requires not upgrading when an upgrade is available, staying where you are instead of moving up, keeping the car that runs instead of replacing it with something newer. The lifestyle you had before the raise was fine. You were living it. The only thing that changes when you follow this rule is that the improvement in your financial situation goes somewhere real instead of somewhere invisible. The psychological challenge, I'll be honest with you, is real. There's social pressure when colleagues upgrade and you don't. There's the identity question of what it means to earn more, but not visibly live like it. These are genuine friction points, and I'm not going to pretend they aren't, but here's the reframe that makes it easier. Lifestyle flat isn't failure to progress. It's redirecting progress from visible to real. The person who looks wealthier because they upgraded their apartment and their car after every raise has performed progress. The person who kept their lifestyle flat and invested the difference has built it. One of them has $1,040,000 more than the other after 20 years. Rule 2, cost per use before every purchase. The price tag on something is almost always the wrong number to evaluate. Think about how purchase decisions actually get made. You see something, you like it, you look at the price, you decide if it feels affordable relative to what it is. A $200 jacket, a $50 gym membership, a $300 kitchen gadget. The evaluation is price versus some vague sense of whether you can justify it. But that evaluation is missing the most important variable. How many times will you actually use this? Cost per use is the calculation that changes everything. You take the total cost of something, purchase price, plus any ongoing costs, and you divide it by the realistic number of times you'll use it over its lifetime. That gives you the actual cost of each use, which is the only honest measure of whether something is worth the price. Let me show you what this looks like in practice. A $200 pair of running shoes, used 3 times a week for 2 years, gets approximately 300 uses. Cost per use, about 67 cents. That's excellent value. You should buy those shoes. A $200 dress, worn to 2 events per year for 3 years, gets 6 uses. Cost per use, about $33 per wear. That changes the calculus considerably. A $50 monthly gym membership, if you go twice a month, costs $25 per visit. At that frequency, you would save money by paying a drop-in rate at most gyms. But the same $50 membership, if you go 20 times a month, costs $2.50 per visit. Genuinely good value. The numbers are the same. The evaluation is completely different because cost per use tells you something price alone never can, whether you're actually getting what you paid for. And here's what I find most interesting about this rule. The moment you're forced to estimate realistic usage before a purchase, most purchases don't survive the calculation. Not because the price is wrong, because the honest usage estimate reveals that the imagined future, the version of yourself who will definitely use the home gym equipment every morning, who will definitely wear the dress multiple times, who will definitely go to the gym regularly, doesn't match the realistic future. We buy things based on who we imagine will be. Cost per use calculation forces us to account for who we actually are. And that single reality check, applied consistently before purchases, eliminates a significant amount of spending that would otherwise happen automatically. Apply this rule to your existing possessions too, not just new purchases. Go through what you own and calculate the cost per use of the things you're paying ongoing costs for. Every subscription, every membership, every service. The numbers will be clarifying, and they'll tell you clearly what's delivering value and what's just there because nobody got around to removing it. Rule 3, the 24-hour rule. This is the simplest of the 3 rules. It might also be the most powerful. And the reason it works comes down to something very specific about how the desire to buy things actually operates in your brain. The urge to purchase something is an emotional state. It has a peak and it has a decline. When you see something you want, in a store, on a website, in an ad, the emotional response is at its highest. You feel the pull most strongly in that moment. And that's exactly when the purchase decision is worst made, because you're responding to an emotional peak rather than a considered evaluation. Marketing understands this perfectly. Limited time offer? Only 2 left in stock. Sale ends tonight. Every urgency mechanism in retail and e-commerce exists to capture you at the peak of that emotional state, before it fades, before you have time to think clearly. The goal is to make sure the purchase decision happens while the feeling is strongest. The 24-hour rule inserts a buffer between the emotional peak and the financial decision. The rule is simple. For any non-essential purchase, you wait 24 hours before buying. If you still want it after 24 hours, you can buy it. If you don't, you don't. Here's the data that makes this work. Research consistently shows that approximately 70% of purchase desires fade within 24 hours if not acted upon. Not because the item stops being good, but because the emotional state that drove the desire, the excitement, the novelty, the brief sense that this thing will improve your life, dissipates naturally when you're not looking at it, which means that if you follow the 24-hour rule consistently, 70% of your impulse purchases simply don't happen. Not because you resisted them, because you waited, and the desire did the work for you. Think about what that means practically. If you make 3 impulse purchases a week at an average of $40 each, which is genuinely modest by most standards, you're spending about $6,000 a year on things you decided to buy in a moment of elevated emotion. 70% of that, eliminated by the 24-hour rule alone, is $4,200 a year freed up without a single act of willpower or deprivation. $4,200 a year invested at 8% annual returns over 20 years is approximately $208,000 from waiting 24 hours. The implementation is practical and low friction. When you want to buy something non-essential, add it to a list with the date. Come back in 24 hours. If it's still there, if you still want it after the emotional peak has passed and you've had time to think about whether you actually need it, buy it. No guilt. No struggle. You thought it through and decided it was worth it. If it's no longer compelling after 24 hours, delete it. You just saved yourself $40 or $200 or whatever the item cost, and you didn't have to fight yourself to do it. You just waited. That's the entire rule. One decision made once, I always wait 24 hours on non-essential purchases, eliminates the need to make the decision fresh every time temptation presents itself. The 3 rules working together. Here's why these 3 rules work better together than any one of them does in isolation, and why together they form something closer to a complete financial system than most budgeting approaches ever achieve. They operate at 3 completely different levels of your financial life. Rule 1, lifestyle stays flat, operates at the macro level. It governs the big structural decisions, where you live, what you drive, the general standard of living you maintain as your income grows. These decisions set your fixed cost baseline and determine how much margin you have to work with every month. Get them right, and everything else gets easier. Rule 2, cost per use, operates at the individual purchase level. It governs the deliberate spending decisions, the clothes, the gadgets, the memberships, the items you consider and evaluate before buying. It installs a reality check that converts emotional desire into honest arithmetic before money changes hands. Rule 3, 24 hours, operates at the impulse level. It governs the spontaneous spending decisions, the things you want in the moment, the items that catch your attention unexpectedly, the purchases that feel urgent and necessary right now, and often seem much less urgent the following day. Macro, individual, impulse. 3 different entry points, 3 different mechanisms. Together, they catch spending decisions at every level of how they actually happen. Not just the ones you plan for, but the ones you don't. And critically, none of them require ongoing willpower or active monitoring. Each one is a process you follow rather than a judgment you make fresh every time. The decision has already been made. You're just executing. That's what a system looks like. Not advice, not principles to remember and try to apply when you're feeling disciplined. A set of rules that run in the background, making better decisions automatic, while you get on with actually living your life. What these rules actually do to your wealth. Let me put numbers on the combined effect of following all 3 rules consistently, because I think it's worth seeing clearly. Rule 1. Lifestyle flat on a $20,000 income increase redirects approximately $1,400 a month to investments, over 20 years at 8%, approximately $1,040,000. Rule 2, cost per use. Typically eliminates $100 to $300 a month in purchases that don't survive an honest usage calculation. Call it $150 a month on average. Over 20 years at 8%, approximately $88,000. Rule 3, 24 hours, eliminates approximately 70% of impulse purchases. For someone spending $300 a month on impulse items, that's $210 a month redirected. Over 20 years at 8%, approximately $124,000. Combined, across 20 years, approximately $1,252,000. From 3 rules: no extra income required, no sophisticated investment strategy required, no ongoing discipline or active monitoring required. Just a system that runs in the background, consistently, making better decisions automatic. That number is not small. And it comes entirely from changing the structure of how decisions get made, not from trying harder, not from wanting it more, not from finding more willpower somewhere, from building a system that doesn't need willpower at all where to start. If you're going to implement one of these rules today, not someday today, start with Rule 3. The 24-hour rule is the lowest friction entry point. It requires no changes to your lifestyle, no analysis of your spending history, no uncomfortable conversations with yourself about what you actually need. It just requires adding one step between wanting something and buying it. Set up a note on your phone right now. Call it want to buy or whatever works for you. Next time you want something non-essential, add it to the list instead of buying it immediately. Come back in 24 hours. That's the whole thing. One new habit. And if the research holds, and it consistently does, 70% of what ends up on that list will look different after a day. Some of it will still be worth buying. Most of it won't. And you'll have made that determination not through willpower, but through time. Once Rule 3 is running, add Rule 2. Start calculating cost per use before purchases above a certain threshold. Maybe $50, maybe $100, whatever makes sense for your situation. The calculation takes about 30 seconds, and what it reveals, consistently, is worth far more than the 30 seconds it costs. Then, when your next raise comes, and if you're doing the work, it will come. Remember Rule 1, keep the lifestyle where it is. Let the entire increase flow somewhere that compounds rather than somewhere that just costs more to maintain. 3 rules, 3 levels, 1 system. The financial progress most people spend years chasing isn't hidden behind some investment strategy they haven't found yet. It's sitting in the gap between the decisions they're making now and the decisions these rules would make for them. The system is simpler than you think. You just have to actually use it.